The first film was a treatment on myth, things that were basically elements of society that people think are real, but as you take an objective look back, you see that there's a lot of mythology that occurs. And it's not just mythology in a traditional sense, such as religion, which is the first section of the first film, but the mythology of 9/11, which if you take a strong objective look back, and as difficult as it is, you begin to see that the conspiracy theory that could possibly exist is actually the government's story and not some fringe cult ideology, which is what the government claims. And then the third attribute, which would detail even a more powerful form of myth, which is what's continued in the new film, deals with the monetary system and war and the banking system and things that people kind of take for granted. They don't have a full grasp on. For example, war is usually assumed to be this two countries that essentially can't meet in a civilized manner of some agreement, so they engage in war. But what you tend to find is war is actually a business. If war wasn't a business, they could script in a draft human lives. What they would do if it wasn't a business, they would actually take all the industries and conscript all the industries for no profit ever to be made. They don't do that because war is one of the biggest businesses there are. And they make weapons, so they use them. So you keep that in mind. So that's a mythology that people have, this general notion. So I continue the financial system in the new film, and that's the first section of the film. It's in two sections, 4 parts. The first section deals with the monetary system. The first part deals with the fractional reserve lending policy of the Federal Reserve and the Bank of England as well, and goes into the fact that this system is essentially a slavery-producing system because the debt that is created in society is deliberate, and money cannot exist without debt. Money is created from debt, and debt is money, money's debt, and therefore it's utterly despotic to the human condition because everyone has to be forced into labor to get free of their debt. And of course, it's an illusion because there's no way to ever be free of it. Then I continue this with the second part of Section 1, which goes into John Perkins' Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which is a very interesting story about a man who used to work for a private corporation that was affiliated with the World Bank, and his basic disposition was, his basic realization was that his private corporation was actually a front for this ruse, so to speak, that uses the World Bank as a tool for debt for other countries. So what they do is he would go over, for example, and bribe leaders to take big loans and say, well, if you don't, then there's going to be problems. And those that didn't, there were tremendous problems, overthrown, assassinations. And otherwise, the countries would take the debt and then they'd be enslaved to the Western financial system because all these structural adjustment policies would be put forward on the country because of their outstanding debt, and therefore they would have to give over their natural resources, they would have to submit in multiple ways. So that's the first half of the second film, and then the second half deals with change in an attempt to override all of this stuff. And the essential argument is that the monetary system is not only structurally flawed because of the first section of the film, I deal with the financial system, to the extent where, structurally there's not enough money in the system, there's always scarcity, structurally to the extent that the World Bank is, in fact, very much a despotic, hegemonic institution. But that also bleeds over into the other most important part, which is the psychological manifestation of the monetary system, and how it actually relates to our behavior in society, and how we essentially don't know how to relate to each other because we've been conditioned, at least in a civil way, we don't know how to relate to each other in a civil way because the entire system is based on everyone leeching off of everyone else. And it's a very fundamental thing. Most don't think about it that way. That really is the nature of it. So there's a psychological flaw in the system, and as long as this exists, you really can't expect ethical or decent behavior. This goes from, say, a cat burglar, to the invasion of Iraq. It's all the same general train of thought. It's differential advantage and exploitation by one group over another. So then I propose a solution to this core element, and that is this project by a man named Jacques Fresco called the Venus Project, which is essentially a notion of redesigning society from the ground up to make it actually humane, to where, as opposed to everyone fighting together, everyone contributes. And it's a very complex thing for me to talk about. It's very long-winded, but essentially you want to design society for society. You don't want it to be this outdated system that we have today of all sorts of convoluted notions and outmoded structures and political systems and even religions. Not to say religions would be outlawed or anything like that. It's just coming to terms with these understandings about how we interact as human beings And the things that, updating society to modern day knowledge, both technologically and spiritually, so to speak, because there are many things that we've learned through science that, we don't blame ghosts and demons on people getting sick. We don't do that anymore, but unfortunately these mentalities still have a general, they still stick, they resonate in society, so there's a superstitious basis, and it's multifaceted. So the advocation is a new social system that not only is structurally designed for society, but advocates in its environmental resonance a new human value system. And in reality, both of these things have to occur at the exact same time. You have to have a human value system cultivated and a society cultivate, an environment to be cultivated, because they have to balance each other out. You can't have just one and then the other. So simultaneously, this has to develop, so it's through a process of education and social restructuring that such a system could come to be, and that's what the film advocates very generally. And I'd say that basically encapsulates the whole project. The whole project in general is this. The first film deals with the problems, and then I attempt to get to the core of the problem in the second film, and then present what I feel is a at least philosophically a very decent solution that has so many elements to it that can be expanded upon by other minds and continued forward. The philosophical basis, I think, is quite profound, and I think it's nearly empirical. So.